Users were not stupid. If you just see that one company, they are not taking the time to localize in your language, well, it might look like they're interested in your money. This market is not really relevant for them.
Hello and welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast, where experts discuss international content management, translation, and global communication. I'm Caterina from Undertow, and today with our founder Nicola Calabrese, we have the pleasure of sitting down with Miguel Sepulveda, the visionary behind Localization.com. With more than 20 years in the localization game, Miguel just doesn't talk the talk, he writes about it too. From his early days as a QA engineer, he has evolved into the go-to expert in the field. But wait, there is more about Miguel. These days, he is the Globalization Director at King, the brilliant minds behind Candy Crush. Stay tuned as we dive into his incredible journey and pick insights from the man himself.
Hi, Miguel. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Good. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're going to talk about localization and expanding into international markets. And how does it work as well at the level of internal communication with different stakeholders? But first, actually, I wanted to ask you if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, your current role at King. What do you do in your day-to-day?
Sure. So I'm working at King, the mobile company. I'm the video games industry. So King is known for Candy Crush. It's the most popular game. And I've been here in these roles in this company since 2014, so approaching 10 years. I am currently working as a globalization, which basically it's all around getting a strategy about how to get our games ready for global market. Because we operate with our games globally, we can find them in different markets. And it's all around what's needed for game global readiness, what's needed for inclusive content creation. So it resonates with the different audiences. So it's sort of thinking what's needed to deliver what the players need and want. So it's very interesting though, because video games is a very creative industry. It's a little bit like the conversion between, music and movies and creative marketing content, because they are a product that is continuously evolving the game. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here and contributing to make the world sweet, as we say.
Yeah, that's yeah, it's a lot of different fields that come together. Yeah, I'm sure it's super interesting. And when you think about localization, why do you think companies it's important? What's the role? Why it's important for companies to want to get into global market? Well, why it has a crucial role in that, let's say, more widespread around the globe?
There are many reasons. I could be taking 4 hours for this, but I can try to summarize for, 3-4 reasons. So we have time to talk about more stuff. I would start with one of the important reasons for companies to do localization is to remove the language barrier. Language plays a crucial role in communication. And localization addresses language barriers by translating and adapting the content in the local languages in the target market. And by speaking the languages of the customer, companies can effectively engage with them, build trust, and establish stronger connections. And I also like to think about language barrier and what we do in localization in a way to make products more accessible. Because if you think about accessibility means that there is a barrier. It can be a physical barrier. It can be another type of barrier. And language is a barrier. I mean, you go to Korea and you're going to speak Korean, you're going to struggle. And that's going to be a big barrier, right? So I like thinking about we are contributing to remove those barriers and removing barriers when we are thinking about global. That's a good thing. So that's one of the main reasons. Another one is a bit related with customer experience, because localization improves the overall user experience by tailoring products and services to the specific needs and preferences of target. And this has to do a lot with localization. because it's all about adapting the user interface. It's about adapting dates or currency, measurement use units, payment methods. Even we can go the extra mile and think about how you are adapting the pictures, photos, illustration, even the colors, the different colors, they have different meanings in different cultures. So it's all about finding a way to resonate more with local audiences. So that's also important from a customer experience perspective. And perhaps the third one, and this is important and sometimes overlooked for some companies, is everything related to legal compliance. Because different countries, you know that they have specific laws and regulations and standards that companies must comply. And localization ensures that products and services meet those legal standards and those regulations. So, for example, in the case of mobile or in the case of games, you have to be mindful tracking data of your users because you cannot really track them. So there are a few things that you need to do there depending on the country. And this is something that localization teams can contribute. So everything related with regulation and localization can contribute. So yeah, there are many different areas, but probably these three are like a good icebreaker. The removing the language barrier, increasing customer experience and everything related. Those are important things for companies that they want to go global.
Yeah. And what about, like, for example, looking at your competitors in the market? There's sometimes you're entering a market where you already have some of your competitors there that they're using their content localized, or maybe they are from that market. So let's say you're entering Turkey with English content, you are competing with a Turkish company, that even though maybe it's smaller or the product is not as good as yours. How do you think, like, is that, how do you look at that, and how do you consider, is it worth it? And the localizing, or at what level? How do you look at those kind of things? Yeah.
So all that it's like around, particularly the scenario that you were describing, it's around how you position yourself, your company, your product versus the competitors. And there are different examples there. There is a clear one with Google that they are, and they were not that relevant in China. And well, they are huge, obviously. Everyone knows Google in most of the world. But in China, it was Baidu. And the reason why that happened is that they took the needs of their use. And in the case of Chinese, that would even include like a player behavior, not player, user behavior research, because it's how they read, which is different because the font for that is different. And the preferences of the web pages is also very good. For us, it might be more like a kind of a clear web pages where scrolling seems very intuitive. In Japanese websites, in Chinese website, everything for our eyes, it feels super crowded. And it's like a lot of content there. And it's just because the way they look, the way they scan information, the way they absorb information. So I think that every company, they need to think about how you are going to differentiate from the competition. If the competition is already there, you need to study them and you need to understand what they are doing. So that's actually not that bad, because usually what I'm seeing in most of the cases in my career is that you want to enter in one market and maybe you are the first one, and then it's not that clear why you want to do that if the others are not there. So yeah, you need to think about which are the benefits that you are going to have and how you are going to explain that. It's going to be different pieces of a puzzle, because you can start thinking that, okay, if I think like in Turkey, as you were suggesting, do I want to go with social media localizing Turkish? Do I want to have a specific SEO campaigns there? Do I want to have localized customer support? Because that will be another way of differentiating from your competitors, or if your competitors, they are doing that, you need to do that because there's already an expectation in the market. So are all those things that you need to take into consideration, decision, but definitely you need to fight either to close the gap by understanding and studying, examining what the others are doing. And if it's the other way around, you need to start with the end in mind that this is my vision. If not, I want to be doing this, and that. And then little by little, create that strategy and roll out.
And you touched about this before, but like, if you can expand a little bit about the role the localization might play with the user engagement and customer loyalty in general in different markets?
Yeah, so there is this important thing, which is that people struggle to engage with content they don't understand. And that's very typical coming from American mindset or UK mindset that everyone speaks English. But there are two things there. The first one is that it might not be true. And the second one is that I can speak English, but maybe I'm tired of using English at the end of the day. And I don't want to keep consuming content in English. And that's particularly important, like in streaming. So that's why you might have like Netflix that they have their shows in so many languages. Because at the end of the day, when you are like tired of the day, you don't want to really translate in your head what you are watching. You just want to disconnect. The same analogy goes with video games. With video games, you don't really want to think until you are given the chance between English and non-English. In most of the cases, and there are multiple studies saying that in most of the cases, users will go to the localized version because they want to have like a good time. They don't want to think. So every market, every vertical is going to be different. If you're talking about, I don't know, pilot equipment, user guides for air flights, that might be different. Or the same it might be for pharmacy or life science. But that's why it's so important to understand what's your engagement and what you want to achieve, because every digital product, it serves a different purpose. So the purpose of using an app to book your hotel, it might look like they're interested in your money, but they're not interested in investing their money. It's like, okay, this market is not really relevant for them because they are not making an effort, because they are just rolling out in English, in this, in this, in that market. So then you, as a consumer, you can make a choice and you can say, okay, I don't care about that. Can be the case. You like the product so much that still is fine. You don't fully understand it, enjoy it. You need to make effort. That's fine. You go with that. But perhaps that only works when you have a position that you are dominant or when you don't have like an alternative. Because if you have an alternative, probably you will go to somewhere where you can have that TV show that, when you can play that game in your language, when you can book that hotel and that flight, that you can read all the details properly and you understand them. So there is this big component that by localizing, you build trust, and that will bring loyalty. And that's the best thing for a company because you want loyal users. And that's something that it requires an effort from a company side, because you cannot expect that you roll out something for your US clients and you are going to have the same level of acceptance in Italy, in Spain, in Germany, in Japan, in Korea. So you need to take the time to do all the work and be patient, because obviously this needs some trust and loyalty.
And yeah, you mentioned from what you explained, it's like a major effort with lots of moving parts, and it takes time. So one of the challenges sometimes is like communicating with internal stakeholders to get enough buy-in, for example, to invest in localization or to invest properly in localization, in the sense that maybe sometimes a company might want to enter too many markets at the same time without investing enough in the localization efforts, or maybe they need to be guided a little bit. So what kind of like recommendations would you get, or like what do you think would be the best practices, or like when you want to present and communicate the value of localization internally to internal stakeholders in order to get the buy-in, and how to approach that?
So probably we can think about this from two different angles. The first one is a kind of iteration and MVP mindset. I really like this idea from my giant methodologies of a minimum viable product, where you are starting with something and you add more and more and more and more complexity. And that's done a lot in continuous delivery, in continuous localization. That's very normal now. What I like about that approach, we are talking about building software that we can do the same analogy for what we do for localization, is that you start with the core concept and you just basically pilot and test that concept. And based on the feedback you are getting, you go one step more and more and more and more and more. In the case of localization, you saw there is this tendency that all of a sudden you want to be in all the markets. So there are some companies that they are not there, and then they want to be like in 20 markets at the same time. And it's like, okay, let's wait, because that's complex. Why don't we start in one market, two markets, and then we keep adding a lot of languages you know more. Or if you do really want to have like 20 markets in parallel, why don't you start with a certain feature or a certain campaign that then you can scale? So that's something that I see very often, that is kind of all or nothing mindset. And I think it's way better to start with something small, and then you keep adding complexity. So that's one thing that is really important to consider. There is this other thing that I think is a challenge, and it needs to be explained a lot, is the oversimplification of what localization is or what to do. Because some people believe that localization is simply translation, something that should be easy, quick, and in many cases automated, or that any native speaker in a company can handle. It's not uncommon to come across a native, let's say, a developer, and probably this resonate with you, and that this translation sounds weird. And when you ask them, okay, what's wrong with this translation? It's like, I don't know, it just sounds weird. And if there is nothing wrong and grammatically it's okay, what's this weird? And it's because they have the perception, and then that means that everyone believes that they can do localization, or that localization is something very easy to do with machine translation, or now ChatGPT and large language models and all this. But actually, it's not like that. And there are many things that you need to explain about the little things, because every jobs like this seems to be oversimplified. But there are many things. Of course, if you are translated like, I don't know, the instructions of a microwave, maybe that's fine. Maybe you can do something like that because it's not that complicated. But probably if you have a page like Airbnb, you really need to pay attention to everything that you are reading there, because you are gonna, what you don't want is to book your holidays and that you make like a big mistake because something was not properly either translated or whatever, right? So you do really need to explain why localization is important, why we need time to do stuff, um, which are the problems if we try to get shortcuts and cut corners, because sometimes that happens. And we've seen that last minute request is done via Google Translation, and then it becomes viral on Twitter or social media in general, right? So yeah, there is this scene of oversimplification that I believe that that's what we need to continuously explain and give visibility about what we do. So those two things, I think they are good starting points. Like start small, increase complexity when you have the structure. Don't be too ambitious because it's more complicated than it might look like to get a solution to deliver simultaneously in 20 markets, whatever amount of markets. And then the other simplification, because it's not just we machine translate everything and we publish. There are many layers there and a lot of details to be considered.
And actually, linking back to this about the complexity, one of the things that will be interesting as well is when do you think like localization needs to come in, let's say, product development in general, or within a company? Like when is the time, let's say, to involve localization in what you are preparing from a, let's say, product or content side of things?
Actually, that was the talk I delivered last month in Localization World in Malmo, which it was around Move to the Left, thinking about the analogy of software development, because in software development, you have the ideation phase, and that's left at the very, very beginning. You have the ideation phase where basically you are thinking, what do you want to build? And then you have the design where you start having like some sketches and wireframes, some meat in the ideation. And then you have like the development, launch, the customer support. So there are like a different, usually localization things, they are like in the middle or a little bit right, which is actually the opposite of what everything should be. Because the right moment to start thinking about localization is of the ideation. When you are start thinking about what product you are going to build, you need to start thinking which markets you are going to be releasing that product. And you need to start thinking the customer behaviors in those markets. Because if you are building one web page, one app, whatever you're building, the behavior is going to be different for Western, for East. So you need to think there around, okay, can we do customer research here in local market? So we are getting their insights and we are taking their opinions into the development. Because if all that you do as a localization professional is just to deliver translation, a kind of ticketing system that you, at some point, you get a ticket, you have some files, you need to deliver some files, but that's it. That's very transactional. There's not really added value there. The added value left, because that is where you can give feedback. Hey, I believe we should be present in these markets. And then you can go and think, if we are going to launch our software in Brazil, we need to take into consideration the payment preferences over which they are going to be very different states, and they are going to be very different from Japan. And from China, you have a WeChat that they might use pretty much for everything, but that will not work in South Europe, for example. But if you are not taking those aspects in consideration in the design phase, in the ideation phase, and only with sudden you have something that when you are translating that, you think this is not good. That's fair. Of course, everything that it has to be with internationalization or per the code for global launch, that has an important impact, because every country, they will have their different systems to deal with very basic stuff, such as the currency. So if you don't, or the fonts, if you don't take the time to implement the fonts, then you might be releasing your product in Spain without the any, or in Japan with missing fonts. All those things left. And that's why I'm always advocating to that the best moment to involve localization is when you actually have the idea. Of course, that's not a full-time job that you need to be there. So it's not that you are there like 8-10 hours every day. It's like you are an important stakeholder that they need to take into consideration. So you bring your expertise to the table and do with it. And then the designers, the writers, they can start creating the content and you can give some feedback. So it's more like a kind of consultant role in a way, which you can play in that moment. But it's absolutely crucial to have an opportunity to give feedback for the product as soon as possible. Because then everything's already code and it's very expensive to change things. That will not work. Because if you are introducing a misconception in English, we usually, most of the development start in English, and then you go to 12 different markets, you're basically introducing that problems 12 times. That's not really working. So that's why you need to go to the early development and say, hey, let's pay attention to this, that. So that's what I'm always trying to do, finding a way to be involved there. Because also, actually, from another angle, if you are a client and you are buying services from a provider, you are going to be able in a better position to help translators. Let's say that I am working with a company in pointing languages. If I'm able to give them good context about what I want to translate, the translators are going to love me because they have all the context and they have all the details. But the only way that I have those details is again going to the left. So I have time to talk to my stakeholders and say, hey, we need this, and that, because these people that they are far away from us, they need this. Otherwise, they are blind. They cannot really adapt this in a way that is useful. So that's why it's so important, the idea of the left and the idea of being involved as soon as you have the opportunity.
And yeah, thanks. So we're going to stop here for today, but we're going to come back for a second part where we're going to go more in details. We're going to talk as well about ROI, which is this concept that is never really clear, but it's always interesting. Everybody's looking for that. Nobody knows where it is. So we will talk about that. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for joining us today. The Multilingual Content Podcast is powered by Undertow. We help companies translate their content into results. Get in touch if you want to know more. And if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episode. See you next time.